Welcome to Color Outside the Lines. I'm Krista, and this podcast is for you if you are ready to step out of society's narrative and build a life that is completely aligned to who you are and what you are meant to be doing, and feel safe doing so. Together, we rewrite old programming and create our own stories that guide us toward our most authentic selves. You being you is what the world needs most right now. Let's get started. Brenda, welcome to Color Outside the Lines. I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
Well, it's wonderful to be with you.
Thank you. So Brenda and I met through a mutual friend who got us both into podcasting, which is really exciting.
Yes.
So Brenda, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about your story. You have a little bit of an unconventional story, and your success is a little bit unconventional, which is what we love here on Color Outside the Lines. So I'd love to hear a little bit about just kind of your story of coloring outside the lines.
Great. Well, thank you for asking, Krista. I do have a pretty unconventional story. I was married at 19 to my first husband and had my wonderful son, Bill, at 21. And I didn't have a typical career path, and I didn't have a typical life. As can happen when you get married, I didn't go to college. I got married young and I didn't go to college. And that was something that I had a really negative story about for many years about myself. And it really colored my life experience for many, many years. But I worked from the time I was 14. I always worked some sort of job. And I worked when I was married. I was never a conventional learner. I was always curious. I think I look back on my life and I'm grateful for that attribute, that I'm a curious person. I was also an avid reader. I think that made a huge difference. But I worked for a paycheck early on in my life. I worked for a paycheck. I fell into some jobs. I was doing bookkeeping. I was pretty good at it. And then life just kept happening, and I would take on a different opportunity. My son was growing up. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. Life was very different back then. I was able to stay home for 5 years. I worked part-time, and my sister Teresa, contacted me that her then boyfriend was looking for a part-time bookkeeper for this restaurant company. And I went to work. And I worked 7 a.m. to 12 every day, and it allowed me to be home with my son for the rest of the day. He went to daycare in the morning, preschool. And that started a 37-year career with a hospitality company. I started out as part-time. I was doing the books for the restaurants that were housed in hotels. And I originally, for the first 15, 17 years or so of my career, I did accounting, and I grew my position to, I was an assistant controller at the corporate office and did financial statements. At one point, the max, I was doing financial statements for 18 properties, hotel properties. And I really loved that. Well, I loved the work, but it didn't light me up. Like I didn't feel connected to the purpose. And I actually lived in a world that it was a purposeless job, that I wasn't having an impact. So I did a lot of volunteer work. I was raised by a family that believed in service to others. So I did a lot of volunteer work with my son's school and the PTA, and I worked part-time with it's called St. Anne's Infant Home near me. And it was working with unwed mothers and abused and neglected children. I would go in and rock babies. It was a wonderful experience.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
I also did a lot of work when my son went to high school as the team mom for him when he was in high school. So I was always finding my purpose outside of my work. And I had done a little bit of HR, more from the background of benefits billing. We didn't have an HR department at the time. And at some point they came to me and said, we're going to start handing off and formalizing the function of HR in the company. And I was given just free rein with structure of creating it. And I just took charge of it and created a HR department, a full HR department. And I grew to the point I was the vice president and had 3 assistants and people in the field that reported to me. We had over 30 hotels and 8 restaurants. And I am clear that I created that. And that's where I found my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The difference that I recognized that we were making to our guests that came into our hotels and restaurants in providing an experience, and to our associates. And that was where my heart lay in giving them the experience that they mattered in all areas.
I love
And
that.
yes, so, but in 2022, my company was acquired and I was laid off.
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that part of your story.
Yes. And I'm 65 and I was expecting to work for a number of years and retire
Mm-hmm.
and then do something else. But I was laid off, and I'll be honest, the first 2 to 4 weeks I went through
Yeah.
total grief. I went through the whole thing, anger, sadness, the whole 9 yards. And then I got to the other side and said, okay, Brenda, what's next?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And and I hired my own coach
Mm-hmm. Yes.
to see what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And I took about 3 months and explored, what do I really want? And
Mm-hmm.
I looked at all of it. Do I want to go be a VP again in hospitality? The 2 areas that I most especially loved was coaching, because I coached executives and managers,
Mm-hmm.
but I was also really good at risk management. I was known for my expertise in that area. We didn't have an in-house attorney, so anything legal, EEOC charges, lawsuits from guests would come to me, and then I would figure out, okay, what can I do and what attorney do I need to call in?
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. I was responsible for anything risk related, our workers' comp plan, which I was able to massively bring change to our workers' comp rating. And I loved that. But when push came to shove, what I came down to is that you deal with a lot of problems with risk management. And do I really want to immerse myself there? So bottom line is I started my own coaching business.
Yes. I was going to say, spoiler alert, she went for coaching.
I did. And I've been coaching for about a year and a half, and I focus primarily on one-on-one, and I absolutely love coaching. So
Yeah.
that's my story.
Okay, so you basically went from I have no college degree to I'm a top executive at a hospitality company, then to losing all of that and doing your own thing. So tell me a little bit. One of the things we talk on here all the time about is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So did you when you were like kind of moving up the ranks and you were kind of creating this career for yourself out of basically nothing, which that sounds really horrible to say that because you are not nothing, right? Like
Right. No,
you
but I get
are,
it. I don't take offense to that at all.
yeah, but we should like, speaking of mindset, right? We should say that, like, say about ourselves, like we are something, right? You brought yourself to the table, even though you didn't have like the traditional sense of education and things like that, right?
Yes.
And so, how did you feel as you were going through and you were being given all of this responsibility and getting these promotions, and then all of a sudden you're running a whole HR department? Like, tell us how are you feeling through all of that?
Well, it was interesting, and I did have, I mean, I look back and I cringe. I was very insecure,
Mhm.
and I remember early on in my career, and some of the people I worked with will remember this well, I would respond in ways that were born out of insecurity, but I would look like I would present like I knew what I was doing, when inside I was freaked out that they figured out that I didn't know what I was doing. When it was either accounting or HR, I uh, I was a very hard worker. I was someone who would give my all, but I just couldn't know it all because number one, I hadn't had the education or the experience. So I dealt with, for many years, this, they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing. And I was always looking for evidence that someone was better than me. This guy that came in and, he went to Colgate University and got a hospitality a degree and was a true accountant. He got an accounting degree. That, oh my God, he was my peer, right? And I had evidence all over the place that I was less than him, even though I was producing the same things he was producing. He was doing financial statements, I was doing financial statements. So when I think about how I was very on edge all the time. Like somebody's going to figure this out, that I don't have it. And even when I started HR, even though I was passion driven about that, there was a lot of evidence that I didn't know what I was doing. I had to learn. And I did take college courses over the years, like especially for accounting, I had to take some accounting courses just to understand debits and credits and what I was doing. But I never had a college degree, and HR, I think came more naturally to me just because I love people so much and I want their experience to be so good. So I was always looking, how can I make that happen? So I spent many years, and I don't remember exactly when I finally let go of this. I need to have a college degree. If I can't possibly be as good as others without it. But I did finally let go of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And it's so common, when you were talking about looking for other people who like, oh, this person's better than me. This person's going to maybe like take my job, things like that, right? I feel that we do that all the time, no matter where we are, right? If you are in a job, traditional job, corporate job, that kind of thing, or if you are an entrepreneur, one of the things I talked about recently on the podcast was this idea of giving away our authority to people, right? And we're constantly doing that. And I think it is born out of, as you said, that insecurity of like, are they going to find me out? And sometimes I think we think to ourselves, am I going to find myself out? Right? Am I going to realize I've been making it up the whole time?
Yes.
And so I think that a lot of times we look for evidence of that, and we look for this evidence that somebody else could do this better, or somebody else is going to take my job, or somebody else is knows more than me, whatever it is. And you can find that evidence if you're looking for it, right? But it seems like you continue to also find evidence that you were the best person for the job, and that you continue to get these promotions, you continue to be given more responsibility, and that you were really who they wanted. It didn't matter if somebody else had a degree or somebody else had more experience or whatever. It was like you brought some secret sauce that was different, and but basically superseded those things, right?
Yes. Persistence was one of them. I'm known for my persistence.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So when you lost your job in 2022, I lost my job in 2020 because of the pandemic. And that was the second job I had lost in 9 months. So I talk about it as those were kind of very defining moments in my life, because I knew I was supposed to be coaching, and I was running back to things that I knew because I was afraid to start my coaching business. And so when I lost the second job in 9 months, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the moment, but I had it was also in 2020 when everything was happening. Right. But I had a long period of grieving and kind of depression, and like resistance and I don't want to do this.
Right.
Even though I really
Yeah.
did want to do it, but there was a lot of fear, you know? And so when that happened for you, was that a moment where you kind of had known that you wanted to always coach, or was that something totally new for you?
That's a great question. I I knew when I was in the corporate world that I loved coaching. I
Mhm.
loved the difference that I was able to make with people. And I appreciated my CEO, Chris Green, he learned to trust me for that. And so he'd be the one that would call me. But my vision and picture for my future was that I was going to continue working for that company until it was time to retire, and then I would decide what I would do next. I didn't have this vision that I was going to be a coach.
Okay.
I had a vision of finishing this out and then I would figure it out.
Mhm.
So then it was forced upon me. And
Okay.
that's why I knew I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be thoughtful about what I did. I didn't want to just respond how I had responded for the majority of my life, was just to go get, well, I'd been in the same company for 37 years, but prior to that, I would just get a job to get a paycheck. I didn't want to just go get a job for a paycheck. I
Yes.
wanted it to fulfill me,
Mhm.
my purpose.
Mhm.
And I wanted to discover, what is that?
Mhm. I love that. And is that what you now help people do? Do you help them to find that level of purpose that you have now? I guess maybe I should ask a better question first. Have you found your purpose in coaching? Do you feel that that
Absolutely.
fills that? I'm
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it continues to expand in how I can deliver my purpose. It's been extremely rewarding for me.
So you found your purpose later, what seems to be later in life, right? Um, but you found purpose in other ways before that. So is there
Yes.
any kind of feeling that it was like you found your purpose too late, or you wished you would have found it sooner, or maybe you would have never gone looking for it? Can you speak to that just a little bit? Because I know there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who often feel that they are too late, or they missed their chance.
Well, I love that. I love the question because that's who I deal with, of women of all ages, where they feel like it's too late, or they had a dream that they gave up on, that, and I dealt with that. That's what I became known for in my former company, is that I was able to have people represence themselves to a dream they once had, or to something that they've given up on, because life shows up and things become more important at the time. And so I'm a believer that it's never too late, and that it may not look like, if you want to be a women's professional basketball player and you're 65, that dream itself may not be possible at 65 or 45, but there's a version of that we can create together, that there's still a version of that is possible, that we just don't even see as possible.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I believe I'm someone who never lives with regrets, because there's nothing I can do about what I did or didn't do. It's only the future that I can create. And so for your listeners, I would, no, I know some people want to have regrets or can't seem to let go of regrets, but try to just accept that there's only the future you're living into, not the past. Can only inform us what we see missing, what we'd like to create in our life, and what steps, whether it's small steps, large steps, that you can take towards a future that includes what you see missing, what maybe you didn't have occur in the past, that there's an ability to bring what's missing into your future.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. And just before we hopped on, we were talking about this idea of creating your life, which is one of my favorite topics. And you brought up this idea of you have lived your entire life with this mindset of radical responsibility. And so, how does that fit into what you just described?
Well, thank you for that. And I will point out, I haven't lived my whole life like
Okay.
that. I did some personal and professional development with an organization that's foundational to what they teach, is being responsible for all of it in your life, being responsible for your results, all of it. And it's hard to be responsible. It's very hard to look in any situation and say, okay, where am I responsible for this result? And we want to be responsible for the good things, but it's the things that the results we don't like, or, even with a relationship, my husband will tell you that, when we have a breakdown in the relationship, we have an argument or something's not working the way we like, I may not do it immediately, but I always come back to, okay, Brenda, where are you responsible for this? And really looking, if I stand there, even if it's not true that I'm responsible, that's one of the pieces. Like, I've had to get to the point where I say, okay, I know I'm right, right? And I'm not responsible for this, but that's not going to produce the results I want. And that's what I live by. Where is the results, and who am I committed to being in the world? And if I'm angry with my husband and withholding whatever from him, is that who I really want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Do I really want a relationship where I withhold from him?
Mm-hmm.
And so I stand there and say, okay, where are you responsible for creating this disconnect with him or with any relationship? And what steps can I take to create what I see missing? And when I coach my clients, I'm always looking from there, but it's a very difficult thing for people to do. Where can you be 100% responsible for all of it? But it's a very powerful place to stand.
Yes. And I think the reason why it's probably so hard for people, at least what I've experienced, is that there's this feeling a lot of times, especially as children, when we were responsible for something, we would get in trouble, right? So it would be like, oh, well, you broke the lamp and you need to
Right.
take responsibility for that, right? And so, how do you personally and help your clients stay out of shame whenever they are taking that responsibility? Because there is a way to take responsibility and not blame and shame yourself, right? But a lot of times I think that's really hard for people to do. And I feel, at least for me, it made me really resistant to that, because it was like, well, I don't want to be blamed for that. I don't want to have the blame around that and take responsibility for it. So how do you personally deal with that and help your clients through that?
So first and foremost, as I said a little bit, is getting myself present to my personal values, how I want to be known, and my mission in life. And I have all my clients share and create their values, their mission statement, and their how they want to be known. And so I'm always looking, well, what's occurred and how I've behaved or what I've done or not done align with my values? Does it align with my mission? Does it align? And then I look, and that helps me. It helps me clarify. And then, truthfully, the thing I do is I have learned to not make it mean anything about me.
Yes.
It doesn't mean anything about me. It's what I say it means.
Mm-hmm.
And we are someone who's got that little voice in our head that's constantly assigning meaning to everything. And we get to say what it means. And I don't I try really hard not to make it mean anything negative about me, because that's what we'll do. We always default to making it mean something negative about us. There's what's happened. Like you said, I broke the lamp. And then there's what we make it mean about us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I'm clumsy. I'm terrible that I broke that lamp, and look at me, I'm whatever. No, all that happened was you broke the lamp.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to choose what meaning we assign. And we've got to be careful with ourselves and say, look, you're assigning meaning to it that is demeaning to you.
Mm-hmm.
Where's a meaning that you can assign that empowers you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. So that's one of my favorite coaching questions of all time is, what am I making this mean about me? Because I think that's why when you said it, I was like, yes, because I feel like that is one of the most profound questions that we can ask ourselves. And it changes things so fast, right? Because you can start to spiral, as you said, in this negative cycle, and you can start to get to this place. And I have clients do that sometimes. I take them down the negative cycle because sometimes it's very ridiculous, the place that we get to, right? And it's like, oh, I broke this lamp, and so now I deserve to go live in a ditch somewhere without food and water and shelter.
Yes,
You know what I mean? It's
yes.
like, and that's where our brains take us, right? And it's such a dramatic thing to start thinking that about yourself, that like, I made this mistake, that I broke this lamp. It was an accident. I didn't see the lamp. I mean, there could be so many reasons, right? Or you could be mad and you threw the lamp down, and then that's a whole other thing to deal with, right? But none of those mean that like you deserve to like rot in a ditch, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think it's such a powerful thing to ask that. But I love that you took it a step further and said, what is the empowering thing I could make this mean about me? How can I empower myself here? And it sounds like the way you empower yourself is reminding yourself that you have the power to create what comes next.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we all have that ability. It's all available to all of us.
Awesome. That's so great. Well, I was going to ask you, what kind of like statement or mantra would you leave the audience with? So I've been asking everyone kind of what's one thing that people could take away and start saying to themselves, but I might steal what you just said and say that yours should be, how can we phrase this exactly right? How can I make this mean something empowering about me?
Yes. I love that. Thank you. That's perfect.
It's so good.
Yes.
I love that. Okay. Awesome. So you guys take that away whenever you are in a place where, whether you're being fired from a job, whether you just broke a lamp, whether you're having an issue with your spouse, whatever it is, and asking yourself, I'm taking responsibility for this. What am I making this mean about me? And how can I make this mean something empowering about me?
I love
think
it.
that's so beautiful and so powerful. Brenda, if people want to get in contact with you and they want to learn more and they want to do their values and set up their mission statement and figure out what their purpose is in life, how can they get in contact with you?
Oh, well, thank you. So number one, my website is brendamcgregor.com, and they can reach out to me on Gmail, bmcgregor.coaching@gmail.com.
Awesome. And I'll put those in the show notes as well so that you guys can reach out to Brenda. And Brenda, thank you so much for being on here today. This was such a great conversation.
Oh, well, thank you, Krista. Honestly, you are a great interviewer. I felt so comfortable and at ease. So thank you so much for providing
thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button and continue on this journey with us as we hear more stories of people who have colored outside the lines. And until next time, this has been Brenda and Krista reminding you that you are so powerful and you have permission to color outside the lines.